I still remember the smell of sizzling hot dogs and the sound of pedestrians rushing by on the street corner where I set up my small cart. It was a humble beginning, but I was determined to make a living, no matter how difficult it seemed. My weight had always been a struggle, and I knew I didn't exactly fit the image of a street food vendor. But I had to try for myself, for my family, and for the sake of making ends meet. As I carefully prepared each hot dog, trying to make it look as appetizing as possible, I couldn't help but notice the snickers and giggles from passers-by. They would glance at me, then at the hot dogs, and back at me again, their faces twisted in a mixture of amusement and disgust. It was as if they were saying, "How can someone so overweight possibly sell healthy food?" The pain of their ridicule stung, but I tried to brush it off, focusing on the sizzling hot dogs and the smell that wafted through the air, hoping to entice anyone to stop and buy one. Despite my best efforts, the humiliation continued. Some people would even take pictures of me, laughing and pointing as they walked away. I felt like I was a zoo animal, on display for the world to mock and belittle. It got to the point where I dreaded going out to sell hot dogs, but I knew I had to push through. I had bills to pay, just like everyone else. So I put on a brave face, forced a smile, and continued to call out to potential customers, all while trying to ignore the pain their words and actions inflicted on me. It was a hard, thankless job, but I knew I wasn't going to let the cruelty of strangers define me. I was more than just my weight. I was a person with dreams, aspirations, and a determination to succeed. As I wrapped up each hot dog and handed it to a customer, I knew that I was one step closer to proving them all wrong. And even though I couldn't see it at the time, I was building a resilience that would soon take me to heights I never thought possible. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I was standing behind my hot dog stand, trying to ignore the giggles and snickers from the people passing by. It was like I was invisible, just a mere joke to be laughed at and forgotten. But then something unexpected happened. A man, probably in his mid-30s, walked up to my stand and ordered a hot dog. I served it to him with a side of ketchup and mustard, just like I always did. But as he took his first bite, his eyes lit up and a smile spread across his face. He looked at me with genuine surprise and said, "Wow, this is actually really good." I was taken aback. No one had ever complimented me on my hot dogs before. I mean, people would eat them, but it was always out of convenience or pity, not because they actually enjoyed them. But this man, he seemed to genuinely appreciate the effort I put into making my hot dogs. He finished his meal and walked away, but not before saying, "You know, you've got a real talent for this. You should think about expanding your business." I was floored. No one had ever believed in me like that before. His words sparked something within me. I started to brainstorm ways to improve my hot dog stand and attract more customers. I thought about different toppings, special deals, and even a new location. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. For the first time in a long time, I saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn my small hot dog stand into something more. Maybe I could prove to myself and everyone else that I was capable of success. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, I felt a sense of determination wash over me. I was no longer just a laughingstock, a joke to be ridiculed and belittled. I was a business owner with a spark of inspiration and a dream to make it big, and nothing was going to stop me. I still remember the day I decided to take a risk and invest in a new, improved hot dog stand. It was a daunting prospect, but the vision I had for my business was too exciting to ignore. With my newfound confidence and spark of inspiration, I poured my heart and soul into creating a menu that would tantalize the taste buds of my customers. I spent hours perfecting my hot dog recipes, experimenting with different toppings and condiments, and sourcing the freshest ingredients. As I set up my new stand, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. The aroma of sizzling hot dogs and fresh buns wafted through the air, enticing passers-by to come and try my culinary creations. But despite my enthusiasm, the initial days were tough. Financial struggles began to creep in, and self-doubt started to whisper in my ear. What if I had made a mistake? What if people didn't like my food? I recall one particularly rainy day when I was on the verge of tears. The stand was quiet, and I had barely made enough sales to cover my costs. I felt like giving up, but something within me refused to let go. I remembered the spark of inspiration that had driven me to start this journey, and I held on to it like a lifeline. I took a deep breath, wiped away my tears, and focused on the customers who were still loyal to me. Slowly but surely, my hard work began to pay off. More and more people started to take notice of my hot dog stand, and the word of mouth was spreading. Customers raved about my signature hot dogs, and I started to build a loyal following. I remember one customer in particular, a young professional who came to my stand every day for a week, trying a different hot dog each time. On the seventh day, he came up to me and said, "Your hot dogs are the highlight of my day. I've never tasted anything so delicious in my life." Moments like those made all the struggles worth it. As my business continued to grow, I realized that I needed to adapt and evolve to stay ahead of the competition. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but I was ready to face the challenge head-on. After all, I had already taken the leap and built a successful hot dog stand from scratch. What was the next step? Only time would tell, but I was eager to find out. I still remember the day I finally felt like my business was taking off. The lines were long, the smell of sizzling hot dogs filled the air, and the sound of sizzling meat on the grill was music to my ears. But with success comes new challenges, and I was about to face some of the toughest obstacles I had ever encountered. It started with issues with suppliers. They would either deliver the wrong orders or fail to deliver at all. I would have to scramble to find new suppliers, and even then, I couldn't guarantee that they would show up on time. It was a constant battle to keep my stock levels up and my customers happy. But I refused to give up. Next came the issues with staff. As my business grew, I had to hire more people to keep up with demand. But it seemed like no matter how many people I hired, I couldn't find anyone who was reliable. They would either show up late or not show up at all. I would have to cover their shifts myself, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was exhausting, but I knew that I couldn't give up. And then there were the regulations. It seemed like every time I turned around, there was some new permit or license that I needed to obtain. The health department would show up unannounced and shut me down for some minor infraction. It was like the city was trying to make it impossible for me to succeed. But I was determined to prove them wrong. I spent countless hours on the phone, negotiating with suppliers, training new staff, and arguing with bureaucrats. I read every book I could find on business and entrepreneurship, looking for any advantage that I could get. I attended seminars and workshops, learning from people who had been in my shoes before. And slowly but surely, I began to find my footing. I developed a system for managing my suppliers, a system that allowed me to track my orders and ensure that I always had enough stock. I implemented a rigorous training program for my staff, teaching them the skills they needed to succeed. And I learned to navigate the complex web of regulations that governed my industry. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of times when I felt like giving up. But every time I looked out at my customers, enjoying my hot dogs and laughing with my staff, I knew that it was all worth it. I was building something special, something that no one had ever seen before, and I was determined to see it through to the end. I thought to myself, I've overcome so much, I can handle anything that comes my way. But little did I know, the next challenge was just around the corner, and it would threaten to derail my progress in a way that I never could have imagined. I'll never forget the day I received the wake-up call that would change my life forever. I was in my office, going over some papers and planning for the next big move for my hot dog business, when suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my chest. At first, I thought it was just heartburn or a side effect of the stress I'd been under, but as the pain persisted, I knew something was wrong. I rushed to the hospital, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The diagnosis was a slap in the face. I had developed a serious health condition, one that was directly related to my weight and lifestyle. The doctor's words were like a punch to the gut. If you don't make drastic changes, you might not be around to see the success of your business. It was a harsh reality check. I had been so focused on building my empire that I had neglected my own well-being. I had become a slave to my business, sacrificing my health and happiness for the sake of success. But what was the point of it all if I wasn't around to enjoy it? As I lay in that hospital bed, I knew I had to make a change. I couldn't keep going down the same path, fueled by junk food and stress. I started to reevaluate my priorities, to realize that success wasn't just about the money or the fame, but about living a healthy, balanced life. It wasn't easy, of course. Old habits die hard, and I had to struggle to break free from the cycle of overeating and neglect that had defined my life for so long. But with the help of my loved ones and a newfound determination, I started to make progress. I began to take care of myself, to prioritize my health and well-being above all else. It was a journey, not a destination. There were setbacks and failures along the way, but I refused to give up. I knew that I owed it to myself, to my family, and to my business to be the best version of myself. And as I looked to the future, I knew that this wake-up call had been just what I needed to take my business and my life to the next level. I still remember the day I decided to take my hot dog business to the next level. After my health scare, I realized that I had been playing it safe for too long. I was stuck in a comfort zone, and it was time to break free. I started to explore new horizons, considering options like franchising, catering, and other business expansions. As I delved deeper into these possibilities, I knew I needed guidance. I couldn't do it alone, not anymore. I started attending seminars and workshops, meeting with investors and mentors who had been in my shoes before. They shared their stories, their struggles, and their successes. I listened intently, soaking up every word like a sponge. One of my mentors, a successful entrepreneur who had built a food empire from scratch, sat me down and said, "Listen, if you want to make it big, you need to think big. Don't be afraid to take risks, but also don't be reckless. You need to have a plan, a vision, and a mission." His words resonated with me, and I started to develop a plan for national expansion. I spent countless hours researching, brainstorming, and strategizing. I met with my team, and we worked tirelessly to create a roadmap for our business. We identified our strengths and weaknesses, our opportunities and threats. We set goals and objectives, and we started to work towards them. As I looked at our plan, I felt a sense of excitement and nervousness. We were about to embark on a journey that would take us to new heights, but it also came with its own set of challenges. I knew that we would face obstacles, setbacks, and failures. But I also knew that we had the talent, the passion, and the determination to overcome them. As I prepared to take my business to the next level, I couldn't help but wonder, would I be able to stay true to my values and mission? Would I be able to maintain the quality and integrity of my brand as we expanded? These questions lingered in my mind, but I knew that I had to push forward. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was ready to take on the challenge. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity as we geared up for national expansion. I was constantly on the road, meeting with investors, scouting out new locations, and interviewing potential franchisees. It was exhilarating, but also exhausting. I barely had time to catch my breath, let alone reflect on how far we'd come. But as the excitement of expansion began to wear off, I started to feel a growing sense of unease. We were getting bigger, faster, and more complex, and I was worried that we were losing sight of what had made us successful in the first place. I remembered the early days, when it was just me and a handful of employees, working tirelessly to serve up the best hot dogs in town. We had been driven by a passion for quality, a commitment to customer service, and a desire to make a difference in our community. As I looked around at our rapidly growing organization, I wondered if we were still living up to those values. Were we still putting the customer first? Were we still using only the freshest ingredients, sourced from local suppliers whenever possible? Were we still treating our employees with the respect and dignity they deserved? I knew I had to have some tough conversations with my team and partners. We needed to refocus on our mission and make sure that everyone was on the same page. It wasn't going to be easy. We had a lot of momentum behind us, and it's hard to slow down a speeding train. But I knew it was essential. I called a meeting with my top executives, and we spent hours discussing our values and mission. We talked about what had made us successful and what we needed to do to stay true to ourselves as we continued to grow. It was a difficult conversation, but ultimately it was a necessary one. We made some tough decisions that day. We decided to slow down our expansion plans and focus on getting our existing locations right. We invested in new training programs for our employees to ensure that they had the skills and knowledge they needed to provide exceptional customer service. And we reaffirmed our commitment to using only the freshest, highest quality ingredients, even if it meant paying a little more. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. As we continued to grow and expand, I knew that we were staying true to our mission and that our customers would continue to trust and loyalty us. And as I looked out at our thriving business, I knew that I had made the right decision. We were more than just a fast food empire. We were a community, a family, and a force for good. I still remember the day I received my first award for entrepreneurship. It was a surreal moment, sitting in a grand ballroom surrounded by esteemed business leaders and innovators. My name was called, and I walked up to the stage, my heart pounding with excitement. As I accepted the award, I felt a sense of validation wash over me. All the hard work, the long hours, the sacrifices, it was all worth it. The recognition didn't stop there. Media outlets and publications started to feature my story, highlighting my journey from being laughed at for my obesity to building a fast food empire worth millions. I was interviewed by prominent journalists, and my face was plastered on the covers of magazines. It was a strange feeling, seeing myself in the spotlight, but I was determined to use this platform to spread my message. I started receiving offers for speaking engagements and collaborations. I was invited to share my story with aspiring entrepreneurs, to inspire them to chase their dreams despite the obstacles. I spoke at conferences, universities, and even TED Talks. With each speech, I gained more confidence, and my message resonated with more people. The recognition and reward were not just about me. They were about the impact I was making on others. I was creating jobs, providing opportunities, and serving my community. I was living proof that success is not just about achieving wealth or fame, but about making a difference in the world. As I looked out at the sea of faces, all eager to hear my story, I felt a sense of pride and gratitude. I had come a long way from the days of being laughed at and bullied. I had built something that was bigger than myself, something that would outlast me. And yet, as I basked in the glory of my success, I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to life than this. I started to think about my legacy, about the impact I wanted to leave on the world. I knew that I had a responsibility to use my platform for good, to make a lasting difference in the lives of others. As I walked off the stage, award in hand, I knew that this was just the beginning. I was ready to take on the next chapter of my journey, to make a lasting impact that would be remembered for generations to come. As I sat in my office, surrounded by the hum of activity that came with running a fast food empire, I couldn't help but think about the legacy I wanted to leave behind. I had come a long way from the days of being laughed at for my obesity while selling hot dogs on the street corner. I had built something truly remarkable, and I knew that I had the power to make a lasting impact on the world. I began to consider philanthropic efforts and charitable donations. I had always been passionate about helping others, and I knew that I had the resources to make a real difference. I started to research different organizations and causes, trying to decide where I wanted to focus my efforts. I knew that I couldn't change the world overnight, but I was determined to do my part. As I delved deeper into the world of philanthropy, I also started to think about succession and legacy planning. I knew that I wouldn't be around forever, and I wanted to make sure that my empire was left in good hands. I started to develop a plan, thinking about who I wanted to take over and how I could ensure that my vision was carried out. But as I looked to the future, I also couldn't help but reflect on the impact I had already had on my community and the world. I had created jobs, brought people together, and provided a service that people loved. I had also inspired countless others with my story, showing them that anything was possible with hard work and determination. As I sat in my office, surrounded by the trappings of success, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. I had come a long way, and I knew that I still had so much to give. I was determined to leave a lasting legacy, one that would continue to inspire and uplift others for generations to come. And as I looked out at the world, I couldn't help but smile. I had been laughed at, doubted, and dismissed, but I had never given up. And in the end, it was my perseverance and determination that had led me to where I was today. I was living proof that anything was possible, and I was determined to share that message with the world. I still remember the smell of sizzling hot dogs on my small cart, the sound of people laughing and whispering to each other as I served them. It's hard to believe that's where it all started, the humble beginnings of a fast food empire worth millions. As I look to the future, I'm filled with excitement and anticipation, but I also find myself reflecting on the incredible journey that's brought me to this point. I think back to those early days, struggling to make ends meet, dealing with ridicule and judgment from strangers. It's surreal to think about how far I've come, and yet, it's a reminder that success is rarely an overnight phenomenon. I marvel at the incredible success I've achieved, not just in terms of wealth and recognition, but also in terms of the lessons I've learned and the person I've become. I've had to navigate the darkest depths of self-doubt and come out stronger on the other side. I've learned the value of perseverance, hard work, and determination. And I've discovered that success is not just about achieving a goal, but about growing as a person in the process. As I reflect on my journey, I'm filled with gratitude for the twists and turns that have led me to where I am today. I'm grateful for the struggles, as difficult as they were, because they taught me the importance of resilience and creativity. I'm grateful for the people who doubted me because they fueled my determination to prove them wrong. And I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned because they've made me a better person and a more effective entrepreneur. I realize now that success is not just about achieving a destination, it's about the journey itself. It's about the people you meet, the lessons you learn, and the person you become along the way. As I look to the future, I know that there will be new challenges and opportunities, but I'm ready. I'm ready to take on the next chapter of my journey, armed with the wisdom and experience of the past. In many ways, I've come full circle. I started as a small-time hot dog vendor, and now I'm the owner of a fast food empire. But more importantly, I've come full circle as a person. I've discovered my own strength, resilience, and determination. And I know that no matter what the future holds, I'll be ready to face it head-on.